There's still more ahead with Experts on Call on CL 650. Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
We all need somebody to lean on. I just might.
And welcome back. This is Experts on Call on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about insurance. Joining us in the studio from Intact Insurance, we have Patrick Magnuson along with Wendy McCracken and our resident broker Andrew Tablotny of Laguerre Pelling Insurance. So let's switch gears a little bit from general insurance, how our conversation has gone in the last couple of moments. And we're going to talk about our homes now with some helpful information, very specific to homeowners insurance. Basically, what is it and why is it so important?
Well, I guess first of all, I'd say, to my mind, there's no question that you need insurance. Unless you are financially stable or have socked away enough to rebuild and replace everything that you own.
Or one to 649.
Or yeah, sure. That doesn't sound like a good insurance policy to me. But yeah, so this is the place that you call home. It's probably your largest asset. You have all the possessions that are within it. Clearly, it means a lot to you, and to be very likely for most people, it would be overwhelming to try to start from scratch and to deal without it. So why wouldn't you want to protect them?
So we're talking property insurance. What should you actually protect?
That's a good question. You should protect three things. You should protect your house, your contents, and yourself. So your house, that would be basically the structure of your house, the building itself, and any outdoor structures you might have too. So a garage, a shed, or even a doghouse. Your contents would be anything you keep inside of those structures. So it would be furniture, it could be clothing, sports equipment, or
everything in your kitchen cupboards.
Everything in your cupboards, yeah, exactly. And then yourself. So you can purchase personal liability protection in case you're sued for causing property damage to somebody else's property or bodily harm, bodily injury to somebody else.
As a broker, I would probably dissuade you from putting in a claim on your doghouse.
When you talk about bodily injury or bodily harm, is that somebody tripping and falling on your property or inside your house? Does it matter?
It could be either of those.
It could be either of those.
Or it could even be not related to your property, but something that you do somewhere else. So if you're skiing up at Whistler and you run into somebody and break their leg, it's going to cover you for that.
I have heard you use that example before, and I always find it trouble finding out exactly where it fits in. Yeah. But that's true. That's under your property.
It's under your personal liability section of your property policy. Yep.
See, I'm trying to pay attention. So the three main items covered in property insurance: your house, your contents, and yourself. Now, Andrew, tell us a little bit about a myth that you hear from maybe clients or people on the street about home insurance. And this is along the lines of, I have a policy and it covers me for everything.
Right, and that's the advantage of dealing with a broker as opposed to going online. You can read a little bit, but most people get when you start reading insurance terms, it's it's not a very sexy thing as far as being involved in or looking at. So people's eyes tend to gloss over, and they don't really pick up on what's there. There's three types of policies you can buy. And I'll try and keep it simple. It's name perils, broad form, and comprehensive. The two policies that you deal primarily with are the name perils and the comprehensive. So a name perils policy says we insure you for specific things: fire, theft, lightning, explosion, burglary, etc., etc. About 17 different name perils. Whereas a comprehensive policy says we insure you for everything that happens except, and then they list the exceptions: nuclear incidents, infested by termites, mudslides, tsunamis, that sort of thing. Essentially, the difference between the two policies is that on the things you're most likely to claim on are loss, accidental damage, or mysterious disappearance. So I always give the example: I've got a $5,000 camera, I'm on the ferry, and I drop it off the side of the boat. Well, on an all-risk policy, the insurance company would pay for that. On a name perils policy, it wouldn't. If I drop the camera on the ferry and it lands on the floor and smashes, again, an all-risk policy would cover that, whereas a name perils wouldn't. Or I go to get that camera to go on the trip and it's just gone. I have no idea. Did I leave it in my car and it got stolen? Somebody snuck into my house and took it. It just mysteriously disappeared. That's covered under an all-risk policy, or what we call a comprehensive form. Now, the broad form is kind of a compilation of the both. It gives you all risk coverage on the buildings, so if you accidentally damage your buildings, i.e. you spill bleach on your carpets, that would be covered. But they give you name perils on the content, so it would actually have to be stolen or in a fire to be covered.
How does one possibly determine which policy is best suited for them?
Well, it's all about risk. So, brokers tend to sell comprehensive coverage, but then, these days with some of the increases we've seen, and the building values are going up, which is causing higher premiums, and the earthquake rates are going up, which is causing more costs. I always give the clients an option. So the majority of my clients have $1,000 deductible, because I've been selling that for 5 or 6 years, because there is an intrinsic savings involved in that. But I'm now saying to clients, well, look, here's the difference if you wanted to go to broad form, and explain the difference between the broad form and the all risk, and say, well, you could save $182. Your earthquake rates just went up 175, but if you wanted to take a little more exposure on and not be covered for loss, accidental damage, mysterious disappearance, you can save $150. So.
Wow.
But if you go online, the computer isn't going to say, oh, by the way, if you want broad form, you've got to do that. You'd have to go in and poke around and actually figure out whether it's worth your while to save. And so that's the advantage of the brokers. They're there to advise you and give you options.
Exactly. I was just going to come back to that, saying that this is how you establish a good broker from a bad one. What about some of the other myths that we've heard? Like, what's an act of God, and where does that fall into it?
Acts of God is that's a popular myth that acts of God aren't covered under property policies, and that's a myth that I would love to debunk. And every time I hear it, I question people or challenge people to pull out their policy and find any reference to an act of God.
Where does stuff like this come from?
I don't know. I think it might be Hollywood. I'm not sure.
I think it's Hollywood.
Yeah, I think so too. Because that raises the question: does that mean an atheist is covered for everything? I don't know. But
fires, wind.
Sure, wildfires, hail, wind, hurricanes, tornadoes, all that stuff is covered. Even a plague of locusts coming and eating. There's even coverage for certain things on your property. So even that would be covered. So. That is one that we want to debunk, but so acts of God are covered.
Now, but in fairness, there is certain things that are excluded. For instance, tsunami is excluded, and mudslides are excluded under policy. So which some people would classify as acts of God. So it depends on which act of God you're actually questioning. So
better to be specific.
The one where he came and split the waters. No. So basically, in the recent windstorm that we had, when so many people in the Lower Mainland suffered all of that property damage from the trees coming down, that's not an act of God, whether it was or not, it doesn't matter. But does that fall under liability coverage? And if they had this plan, they'd be covered, or?
Well, if a tree landed on your house, that falls under your property coverage, and the damage to your house would be repaired.
If a tree landed on your neighbor's house.
If your tree landed on your neighbor's house, would that be liability, or would that be a property one?
Wouldn't be either.
It wouldn't. If a tree landed on the neighbor's house, the neighbor's homeowner's policy would take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're not negligent.
Yeah.
And you're not responsible.
Okay, here's a good one. You have to pay more insurance if your car is colored red. Have you ever heard that one?
Oh, I've heard that one, and that one's definitely false. So color does not matter. Certainly the type of car will, but all other things being equal, a red Corvette will cost more than a red Chevette, but a red Corvette won't cost more than a blue Corvette.
Okay. How about another myth about property insurance? I live in a condo. I pay my strata fees for insurance, so I'm already covered.
That is actually a hot topic in Vancouver, because the reality is we're a city of condos and townhouses. Strata fees cover the building insurance. So the actual structure, that is what the strata would have insurance for. When we go back to the three things that we want to protect, which is two of those were contents and yourself, the liability. A condo unit owner's policy would cover exactly that. So if you own a condo, any of the contents you have that belong to you would be covered under your own condo unit owner policy, not the strata policy. The same as the liability would also. And betterments and improvements. So betterment and improvement would be, you've moved into your condo and you didn't like the floors, so you put brand new hardwood floors. That would fall under the condo unit owner's policy.
Good clarification.
And the one other thing that really people need to concentrate on with condo policies is the strata deductible. that's included. Intact includes up to $25,000 for that. So if there's a claim that occurs, because we get the biggest amount of complaints when we have claims involving stratas, because you've got two policies involved. You get two different sets of adjusters that have competing ideas on who should be paying over it, because you've got the building insurance company who doesn't want to pay for anything that has to do with the tenant or the owner, the condo owner, and you've got the condo owner's insurance saying, well, no, that's a building issue that they should be paying. So it does create problems. But at the end of the day, if water emanates from your unit and goes into the common property or the unit below, the strata's insurance will pay, but they will assess you the cost of their deductible. And most deductibles now are anywhere from $5,000, $10,000, or if there's been water claims in a building, you're looking at potentially even $25,000. So if you have no condo insurance, you could be getting a bill for $25,000 if your dishwasher happened to go.
Yeah, even if you're not negligent.
Now you're scaring us. But this is reality, right? So how about if you run a business out of your home, or you have tenants or extended family living with you? How does that affect insurance?
Well, yeah, certainly if you have a business, for example, if you're making pies or something like that and selling them, it'd be great if you had some sort of home-based business insurance, because any sort of claim that might come as a result of that would not be covered under your homeowner's policy. So you'd probably have to talk to your broker and find something for about a home-based business package. It'd be very affordable.
Is there any advantage to actually staying in the same place for any extended period of time, like staying in your home?
Sure. I mean,
place of residence for 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, stability is important, and at Intact, it's actually one of our rating factors. But that maybe it's not always intuitive, but I mean, I just moved into a new house, and I'm finding things all the time. Now it's time for me to do my irrigation blowout, and I really don't know how to do that. So had it been a house that I've been living in for a number of years, those kinds of maintenance issues, you're more aware of them. You know where your water shutoff is. You know the history. You know how long the water tank has been there. And so stability of residence and how long you've stayed at a place, it is one of those sort of a little bit maybe nebulous factors, but it does lead to sort of more awareness of the risk, and it tends to be a benefit.
And a great point for baby boomers, which make up a huge majority of our audience. What about maturity and experience? Does that play a role in insurance?
Yes, it's like car insurance. You know, the more years you have experience, the insurance companies look at that as it's another factor that goes towards how they determine their rates. So if you've been around for a number of years, you get the benefit of that. And in fact, Intact has, as Patrick mentioned earlier, they have a lifestyle advantage policy that's available for people that have been claims free for 5 years and are over 50, and has some significant benefits to it that are worthwhile looking into. The main one being that you, under your current policy with the GRC, you still have to rebuild your house where it is. It's what they call the same site clause. And what they've done is they've waived that. You can actually just take a check. You don't even have to build. You could just say, give me my check for $600,000 and walk out the door and go build in Kelowna or go buy a condo in Saskatchewan, if that's what your dream is.
What's the GRC?
Guaranteed replacement costs.
Okay, sorry.
See,
that's
insurance jargon. Yeah.
What about loss prevention and all the steps taken to protect my home? This must potentially lower my rates. Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah, this would lower your rate. If you invest in devices that protect you against fire, water, vandalism, for instance, so installing a monitored alarm system or even a water detection system, these will lower your rates definitely.
Okay.
Or a mainline backwater valve, or a sump pump with a backup power system. Those two items are very specifically targeted towards sewer backup claims, but they're both very effective to preventing those kinds of devastating losses.
And these days, if you're building a brand new house, you tell your contractors it's cost about $150 when you're building the house new to put in a water valve. In fact, some municipalities now are starting to ban people from doing it because they're concerned that they're not going to be able to handle the water flow in the systems, and so they'd rather the water go into your basement than try and flood the streets. So if you're building a new house, it's negligible to put it in, and that's the simplest time to do it, because afterwards it's going to cost you anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 to put something in.
Well, I'm glad you bring up the topic of hiring a contractor as well. If you're doing a renovation and you have a contractor come into your home, what happens if they get hurt on the job? Is that covered by my property insurance?
No. You're. I have on my website, I've got a spot for people to come in and they can actually go online. If you're hiring anybody to work on your premises, you should be either verifying that they've got WCB for themselves and their employees, or you can actually go on and buy on a job by job basis WCB coverage. It's quite inexpensive, and because at the end of the day, if he breaks his back, he could potentially be suing you, and we've seen cases where homeowners are losing their homes because somebody got hurt on their property.
Get their WCB number before they start the job.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to all three of you. We've got some great tips on home insurance and debunking a lot of the crazy myths that I'm sure I've even used in conversation at some point, especially about the red car one. Thanks to Andrew, Patrick, and Wendy for your input. For more information, please visit the website, intact.ca. We'll continue this conversation in just a moment on CL 650.
This is Experts on Call on CL 650.